Today's guest on 10,000 Miles is my longtime friend of 40 years, Coach Tony Palmucci, a.k.a. Tony, the Kid Palmucci from his rock and roll days very early on. Man, this guy is my brother from another mother. We've been the best of friends, literally, for 40 years. We've covered so much ground together from the music business all the way into corporate America. He and I have spent countless hours on the phone and on video, more so on the phone. And when, became unlimited calling, I will tell you the carriers started losing on our phone calls for sure. He's an amazing guy, an amazing musician, an amazing results-oriented coach. He coaches many leaders in businesses, and I've used him inside of the companies that I led, and he's been just fantastic. Love spending time with the guy. There's so many layers to him, and he helped me get through my book, The Lucky 13, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So let's dive in with Coach Tony. My brother, Tony, Coach T Palmucci. How are you today, man? What's happening?
I'm doing good, Victor. How are you doing today?
Oh, it's good. I guess for Mia's sake, I should call you Lewis because that's how we do it. Hey, for the audience, this is Coach T, Anthony Palmucci, founder, director, and aficionado at twrmindset.com. A coaching organization that helps bring people to their best position in business and then subsequently into their life. Tony, I've known you 40-something years now. Been friends a long time.
Since I've been about 2 years old.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and before you were a stunt double for Bruce Willis.
Yeah,
yeah, I've seen you through so many careers. It's amazing. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Start wherever you want to start. Back in the day, bring it through. I'm sure we'll weave in and out of all this stuff as time goes on.
Yeah, it's odd talking to you about where I'm from since you know.
I do, but the 16,000 subscribers don't.
Yep, born and bred in a place called Bricktown, New Jersey. Shout out to good old Bricktown. I would say middle-class background. I always say the only thing missing from my home were the wheels.
Okay.
It was a good place to grow up, but it was pretty interesting. For me, I think my first goal and want in life was to be a great musician, a touring and rock and roll guitar player. And like the AC/DC lyric goes, by the time I was half alive, I knew what I wanted to be. Definitely the case. That journey, I guess, began when I was about 14 years old, playing 10 hours a day and, dreaming of the big time and, going to see my favorite shows at Madison Square Garden. And no matter what the ticket said, I'd cram my way to the front of the stage and always turn around to kind of see what it felt like to be on that stage. And, after a lot of practicing and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, I had the opportunity to be on some of those stages, fortunately, and kind of at the same time start my business career, my entrepreneurial seizure, if you will, was, teaching music, which led me to starting a music school and led me on the path of becoming a business coach, Never thought that would happen. But
Hey, let's go grassroots for a second. Because I don't want to leave this out. This is, this video is going to be on the internet, which means it's going to be forever. So I want people 100 years from now to know a little bit about our story as well. So Tony talks about guitar teaching. He started teaching out of his house, but then we met at Garden State Music in Silverton, New Jersey, where you came on as a young budding guitar teacher. And, working for Uncle Bill, who was the greatest guy in the universe, hilarious. And I'll fast forward the tape to a bunch of stuff, but I was moving out of a condo I was living in by myself, wanted to save some bucks. I heard Tony was looking for a new place to live. I'm like, hey, dude, we should be roommates. And I know this guy who's got a house downtown and we could fix it up a little bit. It'll be a cool place. So we became roommates at good old Dayton Avenue in Toms River. And talk about the 10 hours a day. I can attest to that 100%. 10 hours of guitar playing. I'd get up in the morning. I love telling this story. I get up in the morning. You'd already be up. You'd have the classical. You'd be playing in your room quietly. Hey, dude, I'm going to the gym, man. I'll catch up with you. Back in those days, I was gone for like 2 hours at the gym, right? I come back, you'd still be in the same spot. I don't know if you moved, if you went to the bathroom, if you ate, you didn't do anything. They did that. You were playing. And pretty much you were there working on various different things, from the classical to the acoustic to the electric. And the only thing you did is stop to shower, go to the bathroom, got to eat. And then when the lessons started, right? Because you were teaching out of the basement of the house. And so that was cool. And then I watched you move from, what I would say the lower level of the dwelling to a facility, right? You started your very first facility and you rented space downtown. It was a cool part of your story. Well, what was it like when you moved out of the house teaching and you now had rent? Because this is a beginning of like the entrepreneurial side of you swinging and taking a leap. We're going to get to where you got to, but for entrepreneurs out there or potential entrepreneurs, I mean, do you think you were just too young, naive to know what the risk was, or were you gung ho, or what were you thinking at the time?
I think it was a little bit about survival. I started teaching guitar when I was like 15 years old. I put an ad in the school paper and was giving lessons for $5 an hour at my house. Amazing. And that was a good time. And it actually paid me about $2 more an hour than the current job I had, which before I met you was pushing carts at Rickles.
Rickles.
4 years later,
you do it better. Do it better with Rickles.
To Home Depot, the precursor to the Home Depot and the Lowe's idea. But fortunately, that got me out of there. And, I wasn't the natural musician, the natural born guitar player, but my natural ability was hard work. So the 10 hours a day were very important. I think that's what made my teaching career work well, because nothing really came natural to me. So I knew exactly how to teach it to people that wanted to learn. And that was a great experience for me and a great opportunity. The entrepreneurial seizure was, hey, wait a second, maybe I could build something out of this and build a music school and things. The rest is history. Meeting you, Garden State Music, I still remember the day. Hopefully you have the bobblehead there somewhere. But that's exactly
what I looked like.
Pepe looked like. And I still remember the handshake. I remember you were at the repair as a guitar repair guy there. Remember you working at the desk and they were like, hey, this is Vic. And you turned around and you were like, hey, Vic Pepe.
That's so funny. That must have been my MO because I just had dinner with Dave and Glenn Greenlow. Glenn I had on, he's a captain at United. But I had met Dave first. We went to high school together. And we had dinner this last summer together in Seaside Park.
Wow.
And they both told the same story.
Really?
Dave said, yeah, I remember the first day I met you. This is so funny because I never knew you recalled the handshake. Dave said, yeah, I was new guy, freshman in high school. We moved from Freehold to Jackson. I'm up at the bus stop. You were just new in 8th grade. You recognized that maybe I was new and you went, hey, you new here? Yeah, just moved in. Vic Pepe, right? And I put out my hand. I shook his hand. And Glenn said, holy shit, you did that to me. So I guess that was my thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Those were some good times for sure.
Oh, that's too funny.
But fast forward, we're living together, back in the day. I guess that's after Musicians Institute for me, because obviously I knew you before I moved out to LA. And then when I came back is when we lived together. So spent a little stint out there in the music business in the early days. And
Yeah.
coincidentally, it was your connection that got me in the band at the time that I had the opportunity to play with at 19 years old,
Yeah.
touring, recording, and making no money, but loving it with a metal band back in the day that was kind of on their decline, but it was a great learning experience for me, and I learned a lot
Yeah.
playing
That
with
was
them.
Keel, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It was Keel.
And
So
it was your work with them previously that made the connection, and I got the audition, and it was a good time.
too funny. So you Keel, what label was Keel on? Atco? No.
It was MCA.
MCA. Then it was Baton Rouge on Atlantic.
Yep. Then
Right?
Atlantic Records with Baton Rouge, and kind of being a hired gun guitar player for touring and recording. Great time again. A lot of good memories doing that. Living in a
I'm
van.
fast forwarding through our music experience because we got a place to get to here today. So from the music, from the school, touring with Dee Snider and the SMFs for 10 plus years, right?
Good
Playing
time.
big stages. That was very cool. I remember you'd be like, hey, I'm going to Europe for a week or Sweden. I'll be back. And then you come back and you'd have a picture of like 50,000 people. And then on Monday you were teaching guitar lessons. It was surreal.
Huge in Europe, but can't get a free cup of coffee in the States.
Yeah, exactly.
So my MO at the time. But yeah, that was great. Having the opportunity to play with Dee and learn a lot about not just music, but the business side of things was great. But, we would play, we called it Rock Fantasy Camp. So I'd get the call on a Tuesday saying, can you play, Sweden on Saturday? We'd leave on Friday, get there just in time to play, and we'd literally leave right after the show. Back to the hotel, shower, in a bus, planes, trains, and automobiles home, and I'd be home at my parents' house eating a Sunday Italian dinner.
So great.
It was
so great. So I'm going to fast forward us to a cool time. You transitioned from guitar teacher to business owner, and I watched that. It was pretty cool. You're like, hey, I got to figure out how I'm not giving 50 lessons a week. So because I know you so well, you buy this building, you build it out, you grow the beard down like Forrest Gump did when he was jogging, right? You put you're an owner of infrastructure. Teachers keep coming on, practices, procedures, all of these things come into place. Next thing you know, you decide, hey, how am I going to triple down and grow this business? So I want to fast forward into the fateful Robbins episodes. Like you and your partner at the time decided to go to a Tony Robbins seminar, right?
Yeah, it started with a TV. First of all, I've been a huge lifelong Tony Robbins fan, as you can attest to, as we both
we shared the cassettes.
Personal development, all the way, to say the least. But, it was during that process I said, I want to scale this thing. I want 50 brick and mortars. I wanted to franchise the business. And I said, let's hire Tony Robbins to help us grow and scale the academy, the music academy that I was building at the time. So we did. We were a part of that for a long time, and we had great access to some of the greatest minds, the Chet Holmes and the ultimate sales machine mentality, Keith Cunningham. But it was really all about systems and processes and procedures and leadership and developing people, and really trying to build a culture that could withstand the test of time and different economic up and downs. And we were fortunate, and during that process, my Tony Robbins coach, her name is Cindy Roll, who was very pivotal in our success, said, hey, Tony's building out what they call a business results coaching team. And, I think you'd be a good fit for it. You had to have been in business or have had a business for a number of years. It was like 20 years. So here we were, we met that criteria. I started this thing in my basement.
Yeah.
And I think it was like the music business background that gave kind of that extraordinary twist to it, because we were going to be, at the time, they were telling us, coaching executives. And, you know, where'd you go to school? What's your MBA? And I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
I lived in a van and ate
By
well,
the river.
took a band to play for 50,000. And I think I could work with your team, you know?
Yeah.
So that gave me the street cred. So, and that's where the path led me. And it was like a 2.5-year process to get on the Robbins team, trained by former Navy SEALs in peak performance and strategic intervention and negotiation. It was great. I mean, being on that team gave me the 10,000 hours of
Yep.
coaching that is required to really, you know, to be successful. So I give that organization a lot of credit for the opportunity to get to do it. Had no idea that would be my path. And
Yeah. That was cool to watch, by the way, because
I know, yeah, you were right there.
I knew from my lens, you went there to gain insights on how to grow your business.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, what you did is you gained insights on how to help other people grow their businesses as well. Right? Because the success of the Music Academy is that you're there an hour a week, right? The place runs, you've got light oversight. It's still a passion, still going, thriving. But you transitioned into full-time coaching and having a coaching business, which I also got to watch and be a part of. I remember the day that you called and said, hey, I'm making myself available to executives. I got a deal for you. 8 weeks, give me a bunch of people. I won't charge you. And I said, ring. You go, hey, what's that? You hear that ring? And I go, no, it's me calling you. Pick up. And then we were on the phone for 3 hours.
Yes.
Because I was working in corporate America at the time. As much as I know and believed in you, I had coaches up to that point, and I want to see how you did.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is the real deal. So the multi-years of practice, and, we talk about all the time, you can't give music lessons to people for 20 plus years and not be coaching them. People in these industries, the best of them, even hairdressers and dentists and doctors, they're all coaches. They're all coaches. The best ones that interact and talk with their customers and understand their lives and listen, and they're all coaches. You specifically were really catering to an age demographic that really needed it, right? And I wouldn't say super young, but teens and people going into college and figuring out to do with their lives and careers. Do I follow music? Do I do something else? My people at that company loved the experience. And it was proven by the fact that we signed a contract to have it continue on a paid engagement. And it became another tool in my belt as a secret weapon to bring coaching mainstream. You and I really collaborated very well on bringing coaching mainstream into the company, because my experience prior to that was that they were giving a coach to the person who was, got one foot on a banana peel and another one out the door, right?
Yeah.
Or they had some PIP plan, and this was part of their improvement plan. And those PIP plans, man, it's like the amount of people that come out of those PIP plans the percentage is very low. Like that's the step before, that's the legal and regulatory step, or the cover your ass step people do before they've already decided you're out, right? Or you're not performing, or something's not firing right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you and I spoke about the possibilities in coaching, what was different about your approach to it, and that, we grew together at that time through the company we were working with, is that this wasn't for broken people.
That's right.
This was for top performers. And I remember the day where we both said, hey, the best sports people in the entire world, male, female, no matter the size, no matter the sport, how many coaches do they have?
Mm-hmm.
Dozens. How many have they had? And the better they got, the more coaching they got, not less. The more game film they got to look at, not less. Feedback, right? Feedback.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was key and pivotal to it being a differentiator for me. How have you seen in all of your other engagements outside of the ones that I have purview to, share some experience that, and how people have shared the benefit of the work you do with them and coaching them and sort of helping them, figure out their own, get their own answers, so to speak.
Well, I think I was very fortunate because the time when I came into the coaching, it wasn't really for the broken. I think there was kind of a shift, and maybe it's because the work that I did with Robbins, but people really were interested in coaching about taking high potentials to the next level. You were that guy, 100%. So for me,
Well,
I never
I'll caveat to saying
well,
that it was my corporate experience and that's how it was used. But I was a Robbins guy along with you,
100%,
and we did the tapes and talked to Dee about. I remember the phone call with Dee. But for me, in being in the corporate lane, like anytime somebody mentioned the coach, it was for that. So now we were bringing the true essence of coaching into the organization in the way you were experiencing, right? So tell us about that.
Yeah, I think it's all in the upfront, because I think there were people that you put on my calendar and people that I worked with in other organizations where immediately they thought it was almost like, am I being assessed? Am I being
It's a trap.
Judged? Yeah, like what's going on? But it was pretty easy because in the upfront, I always say, hey, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. You wouldn't want that from me, because therapy, of course, has its place. And that's really about listening to diagnose and label so that you can give a pathology and treat it to some extent. Coaching really is about listening to understand so that you can help people get to where they want to be. And closing the gap in anything from where you are to where you want to be takes a village. It really does. I'm not an expert in anything, and it's just ironic that I coach everybody and a lot of people in technology, as you know. My technological skills, they are not coming to me for that advice. And it's not advice that I give.
You're not doing code reviews, is what you're telling me?
I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what that is. But the good news is, the mindset is the skill set. And in all the work that I've had done, whether you're working with professional athletes or being a performer myself, there's always that gap from how good you are in your bedroom to how good you are on the stage. And closing that gap for high performers is kind of the goal, whether they're communicating with hundreds or a few thousand people in a corporate situation, or whether you're performing to 10 or 50,000 people on stage. It always comes down to what's between their ears. And I was always intrigued with that because, for anybody that's ever had everybody has. I mean, public speaking is probably more feared than death, I think they say. I mean, I know the saying is that most people would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I know that feeling, because I still get that, the nerve.
We were just talking about that.
Or perform, and it really never goes away, at least for me. But I kind of miss that feeling when I'm not performing, So it is a fun aspect. And I think there's a genuine love of people. And I don't really care what people think, but I care how they think. And I like listening to their story, as you know, to help people convince themselves. Like, I'm a professional convincer of helping people to maximize their potential based off of their own story and bringing out in them the best of them. Because I think people often forget, they remember all the times they failed, but they don't remember the times they won. And I think it's very important to help people really, grab hold and believe their own story. No matter who they are or where they're from, it's always intriguing. So for me, working with high potentials, high pose, as they say, it's always a great experience. I learn so much from doing it. I'm still knee deep in doing it for Thinking Without Restrictions, the coaching company here, because I love doing it. And it's a good time. But the shifts that people make, we talk of the story all the time of from tech to exec. If there was to write for us next, it would definitely be that one. Taking the technician, the individual contributor, the artist, the entrepreneur, the one who's trying to grow and scale a company, lead people to having more of that executive level presence of the we, not just the me. That's an intriguing process, and getting to be a part of that, and ultimately, kind of tracking and trending a little bit to find out what works, and reusing those like tools in the tool belt, and hour after hour of discussion with you of a guy who really rose to those ranks in the corporate world, in the business world, and eliciting strategies from guys like you of what's worked has helped so many. And that's the value.
Yeah, I was thinking about something the other day. Even at a very young age, I always wanted the mic. I wouldn't kick somebody down a flight of stairs to get it. But given the opportunity to perform, like I wanted the ball, I wanted the mic, I wanted to be up at the bottom of the ninth, I wanted the last run or the last pass to win the game. And I failed a lot. And the reason I say that is because you got to want to lead the team, right? And then if you truly have the desire to lead the team, then you got to be a student of the game of leadership and people. Because in order to extract the best out of everybody, you have to truly understand the tools and techniques and things. And really that you'll have 10 people on your team and they're all different. And so there's not one play to run. And the best managers and leaders understand that. Some went to and took a leadership class and they apply the same thing to everybody and then wonder why people are some top performers and some just flake out, but then they go find success elsewhere. The interesting thing is a pretty good transition. 7 years ago, when I left my last corporate post, I had told Coach Tony, I said, hey, I got this thing. I've collected these competencies through many, many years of working at different companies. I've been through a lot of leadership programs. I've got a lot of pamphlets and how-tos and books and training and all this stuff. And I really never threw any of them away and I collected them. But there are these consistent 13 core competencies that I think if people could master and really even have a way to evaluate themselves in it, that they'd be on a better road if they truly wanted to be a leader to doing it. So I remember calling you and going, hey, I want to write a book. And it's about these 13 core competencies. And shit, man, I never wrote a book before. And the thought of sitting down and typing is going to drive me crazy. And so we came up with the idea because you were doing some recordings and transcriptions 7 years ago before AI did it for you. And you go, hey, we can record this stuff. And I got this girl who transcribes for like $20 an hour. We'll send her the recordings, and she'll send it back, the recordings in a document. And then from the recordings, we can extract the content, and then we can the book can be created from there. So I think each one of the chapters in this book, with the exception of maybe the last two chapters, is a 2 to 3 hour phone call on our what would be our phone bill back in the day, but
like this thick.
The transcripts were big, and for everybody, if you get this book, The Lucky 13, Definitive Set of Core Competencies for Great Leadership, this is a book, but if you go to the very first page under the thank yous, you'll see that Coach Tony is prominently under the special thanks. Special thanks to my brother from another mother, Coach Tony Palmucci at twrmindset.com. for the countless hours of dialogue on the topics in this book and the support of brotherhood for over 40 years. So
I always took notes.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I did. I always took notes of those conversations, not just for the book, but all the previous conversations that we had, because I always got insights of, hey, what I could use in my own business,
Yeah.
but then also in the coaching, because you were living that experience at the time. And it was,
This was close to 18 years of collection of experience, and really, skinning my knee and falling on my chin and getting an uppercut, or dropping bowling ball on my foot. So there's lessons through making the right decision, and yes, people will see if they go get the book on Amazon. It's available on Amazon in paperback, Kindle ebook, or a hardcover. What's that?
I said at fine bookstores everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. But not yet, but it is out on Amazon. These 13 core competencies, maybe we can talk about them a little bit, just real quick, they're lucky. Number 1 is business strategies. Number 2 is client focus and service. Number 3 is about performance, how you perform. Number 4, this was a big one, organizational advocacy and commitment, believing in the dream, being in the boat and rowing in the same direction. Because if you're not in the boat and rowing, you're an anchor. Teamwork makes the dream work. Coaching and mentoring, a lot of this came from, I think, this lucky we added as a result of our dialogue and work. Communication, boy, if I had to pick a lucky one and really order them in order of importance, that's number 1. And I see so many times.
It took place.
What's that?
They said communication is the myth that it actually took place.
100%. Diversity, and I was very pleased with the chapter of diversity here, because it came from the heart and soul before it was a upfront topic, and it's very controversial. Some people feel it's being forced. Some people feel it's a metrics game and it's a numbers. And I'm proud of the chapter in this book because it comes from a guy who grew up in Brooklyn, New York, amongst diversity. When diversity wasn't cool, right? And I lived amongst everyone from everywhere in the world. Decision-making, number 9, stress and adversity, number 10, problem solving and innovation, number 11, number 12, relationship building, massive, get out of your cube. And the thing we've talked about all the time, number 13, was embracing personal growth, because the only way you change is with change. And the only way you grow is by being a student of the path. And
any time that I've actually presented on the Lucky 13 in some fashion or another, it always begins and ends with number 13, because
personal growth
isn't involved. That's where it's really a commitment on yourself. And, they talk a lot about coachable. And I think that's the difference maker, is that people that believe in constant and never-ending improvement in all areas of their life are the ones that seem to grow and accelerate that concept, especially with coaching. They're the ones that take to it the most. So I think it all begins from leadership, comes from that personal development. And we say personal and professional development because there's really no hard line. I think you're definitely two sides of the same coin, no doubt.
Yeah. Hey, let's unpack embracing personal growth for a little bit. What do you think is the psychology behind somebody who embraces personal growth and recognizes an opportunity versus something they're lacking and running from it because maybe they feel like it pinpoints a weakness? Did I phrase that question okay? You understand the two sides of the seesaw there? Hey, I got to personally grow because maybe I want to improve, but then I got to admit to myself that I need to improve, and maybe that doesn't feel so great. So how do people make the connection and the jump to having a personal growth mindset?
Well, I think for the most part, I think everybody wants something more in their life. They want something different. They want to create change, and they're not always sure how to do it. So, I'm not really convinced people look at it as how you explained it just now, as being something that where they're broken and they need fixing. Not everybody.
Well, the reason I ask that just real quick is because as excited in the prior conversation about when you showed up, am I here to be judged?
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I here? Is my number up? You
Yeah.
know? So when I heard that for the first time, when you play that back, I was like, huh, okay. Well, maybe, man, that could have just been like, suspect of the process versus the fact that there was an opportunity for them. But every
Mm.
one of them loved it. Um, Personal growth, man. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get it. You can read, you can
Mm.
study. In today's world, you can listen. I think for me, most of my personal growth came from modeling
Yeah.
and not
Mm.
running down, I know it's hard to believe I wasn't on the runway, but I mean, modeling success, seeing people who were finding success and figuring out what and how they do it. And I talk about some of these things throughout the book here, but with as far as modeling success is concerned, gosh, I have so many stories. I mean, you go back to my grandfather. I got my
Luigi.
Luigi. Yeah. Luigi. I got my schooling in customer service and being reliable and doing a good job from him and my dad, Vincent.
Mm.
Always did a good job, always did it well, always charged fair price for it. Their word was their bond. It was very, very important to them. And so that for me, for my personal growth, like I had these great role models, but as I got into business and I really I wanted to get to the top. I just thought that I could do it. I never thought I couldn't. Um, I watched the most successful people down to what they wore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I was at Lehman Brothers, it was a suits environment. You had to wear suits. Hey, that's a cool suit. That's pinstripe. I'm going to get a pinstripe suit. Hey, nobody's wearing. All right, that's blue, gray, and black. Okay, boom. Those are my suits. Oh, that guy. Everybody's wearing white shirts or blue shirts. Hey, that dude's wearing like print, and he's got like this ensemble. Yeah, that's my jam right there. I'm going to do that. I'm going to stand out. Oh,
Mm.
that dude's wearing French cuffs and cufflinks. That's pretty sharp. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Now, that was just part of the look. But to me, it was like suiting up for the football game. The
Sure.
right helmet, the right pads, right? That helped portray a presence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and I know there are so many examples of, I mean, you look at Musk, he's around in jeans and a t-shirt. Jobs had his uniform with the jeans and the mock turtleneck. They didn't need suits to exude a presence, but they weren't in that environment.
Yeah.
So in the
Totally.
environment I was in, you sort of had to kind of look the part a little bit, much like the music business. You got on stage, right? You
Mm-hmm.
weren't in your pajamas. Guys had leather pants and everything was bigger than life and you had to perform. So the modeling came great, but the modeling really fit every one of these things, every one of these core competencies. Um, there was modeling in it, communication, how you communicate, super important. I want to jump to communication. How much do you, when you work with people in coaching, how much are you working on their ability or lack thereof to effectively communicate uh, in their organization, outside of their organization, to get the result they want?
Well, communication is big. Like I said, it's the biggest myth is that it actually took place. You know, in the role that I play, a lot of times it might be between certain people in the interdependent relationships of a team
Mm-hmm.
uh, in all facets, whether it's a band or a professional sports team or the corporate environment. And, you know, what I always find is that, of course, everybody has their own style of communicating. So a lot of times it's about understanding how that person communicates and being able to speak their language. Um, Probably Tony Robbins and the training and the 10,000 hours, but you can't influence until you already know what influence is. And I think that when you understand what makes people do what they do, you're able to influence them to their greater good and help them take themselves to that next level. So for me, communication, that's what I have to do all day long. And it's
Mm-hmm.
mostly the energy is going one way in that I'm curious and asking questions. And what I find, I could see the light bulb go off or I could hear it on a call, is when they make connections. about what is. So that's like a form of communication to me right there. And understanding what drives somebody, what motivates somebody to action is pure gold. And, with the Robbins training and then the 10,000 hours and probably even more than that on my own, I started realizing that if you can get people to understand what influences that other person, whether it's a business partner, whether it's their boss, whether it's their spouse, it's always beneficial to really understand what's lying underneath and what really influences them to take action. And that's how you help somebody make those shifts.
Yeah. In my experience, the communication, I want to focus in on one area, especially, you mentioned before going from tech to exec. Early on in my technical journey, I thought it would be impressive to use a lot of technical jargon in senior meetings because I wanted to give them the sense that I knew what I was talking about. And maybe even an underlying sense that, hey, they really needed me because they have no clue what I'm talking about. But as long as I know what I'm talking about, they're going to feel okay. And at a certain level in the organization, that was somewhat true. But the further I moved up the ranks, it couldn't have been any further from the truth. Because what happened is this. Let's say I reported to the chief operating officer, often to the CEO, and I was shoulder to shoulder with the CFO, and we all had to make a decision on a technology spend. Could have been multi-million dollars, often was. If I didn't have a way of communicating what we were going to do, how much we were going to spend, how long it was going to take, and what the result was going to be in the most simplistic terms, they were left with one of two options. Say yes. Well, there were three options, really. Say no. Let's start with that one. No, we're not going to spend that money. I don't believe we're going to get that result. 2, say yes, begrudgingly, because they're like, sounds like he really knows what he's talking about, but I don't understand a word of what he said. Right? Or the third option would be to say yes and be all in behind the effort. The only way you're going to get somebody all in and behind the effort is if they really understand what it is you're trying to do. And that doesn't come from technical jargon.
No.
Unless, of course, you're building rocket ships, right? In most cases, I'm not building rocket ships. But even when somebody's building rocket ships, at some point, somebody's going to say, I'm going to send this one up in the air and it's going to cost this, and this is the benefit down the road from it, right? Unless you're just experimenting and that's your thing and you've got money to burn. But in business, if you go ask for $3, $4, $5 million for a project, they want to know how it's going to improve the business or the customer experience and the bottom line and potentially the revenue. And if you can't correlate that very succinctly and simply without technical jargon or fear, lots of people sell fear. If we don't do this, we're going to get a compliance fine. May or may not be true. If we don't do this, the CFPB or the SEC or somebody's going to come in, hey, show me the regulation in the guidelines. Like, really tie it. So you've got to make a case, because what you really want is trust. And the way you get trust is when people understand. So the best advice I ever got from somebody was, hey, you got to tell it to me like I'm a fourth grader. You know the person. It was, oddly enough, it was a little bit later on in my career. It was my fourth or third or fourth CIO job. But he said, hey, man, you got to tell me like I'm a fourth grader. And I kind of chuckled at first. But then I went and really thought about it. And I went, that dude just gave me the keys to the universe. Didn't even really know it. That's when I connected. And a lot of that is in this book. That's when I connected that you're going to get trust when they understand and they're behind the effort. Because you want the third option. You want them to say yes. And everybody has to be behind the effort. And you're not going to get that unless there's trust. So communication is absolutely huge. And I also talk about in the book, communicating good and bad news. And the old saying is, news is not like a vintage of wine. It doesn't get better with age.
especially bad news. It only gets worse. And so you'd be surprised that the more people know and they're not surprised and they're a part of the process, and you make them a part of the process and give people good visibility along the way. And if you think you can solve it, you're in a vacuum and you're going to, cram all night long to, be American. And then everybody comes in the next day expecting, hey, yeah, we're ready to go. Now, we got a big delay. You know what's famous in technology, Tony? Famous in technology is to have a project that's X amount of weeks long or months. Let's just use an example. Let's say it's a 4-month project. Easy, because we can break that up in quarters to 100%. And you get to month 3, and then you tell people we're going to be 3 months late. You're like, wait a minute. We've done all this work, unless there was some catastrophic problem that came up that wasn't dealt with in design, but you get 3/4 of the way through, and now I'm going to blow it by another, 50% or 75%. People hate that. And so you need to have a communication and tracking mechanism along the way that lets people know, because you can't come in, or even worse, a week before the thing's supposed to deliver and tell them you're 2 or 3 months out. That's very common. Happens a lot. Happens a lot. Communication is absolutely key. In your coaching of people, where does this fall? How many out of 10 clients, how many are working on sharpening their communication?
Well, first of all, the cornerstone to communication is listening. And I think that, I learned a lot of that from the coaching, the ability to listen and know what you're listening for, so that you can help the client get from where they are to where they want to be. Because in the listening process is where you're gathering all the information, and the curiosity behind why this person does what they do, is the questions that you're asking them to keep the dialogue going, to really find out where they came up with these beliefs, sometimes limiting, sometimes empowering. So to me, communication as a coach, because like everything you said, like corporate stuff right over my head, listening at a particular level of listening there, but it's not but I'm trying to understand where the client is coming from. So if there was one thing that I would say is the biggest difference maker, is actually the ability to listen effectively. And in the coaching world, we call it active listening, of course, but that's where the energy again is going only one way. And, I feel like I'm interviewing people during the day because I'm very curious of how they think. But in order to communicate, it comes down to kind of listening twice and talking once.
Interesting. Of the lucky 13, what of these core competencies, what comes up a lot aside from personal growth and communication? Where do you find yourself working with people?
Decisions, courage. I think that a lot of times when you're working with people whose decisions have such an impact on so many people, and even the trajectory of their success and how they support their families, the decisions they make are, really relevant to a lot of the conversations that I'm having. And that's really what I'm trying to elicit, their strategies for decision making, so that I can help them make the best decisions with the information that they have. And again, I'm not giving them advice. I'm not telling them what to do or how to do it. That would be counterproductive, because every conversation people have with friends and family and their spouses about, they get advice, and everybody means well and their intentions are right, but they say what they would do if they were you.
Yeah.
But somehow that doesn't really help people in the decision-making process to do what's right for them. So the listening process and listening for the limiting beliefs that might pop up that you hear over and over, and then getting curious about those things. But eliciting some of these decision-making strategies are real good. And it's interesting that in the Lucky 13, you put decision-making and courage in there. Because, successful people don't always make the right decisions, but they make all their decisions right.
So
And
that's an interesting phrase, because what I was going to say that, and I talk about this in the book a bit, is it's my belief you shouldn't have one framework for decision, because each decision has different implications. If we were going through, as a leader, if we were going through a tough layoff because of a downsizing or some market shift or something, that's not something I'm going to do in a vacuum. That's not something I'm going to do with a very light heart. That's something that's going to require some good analysis and make sure we get things right. If we have to make a super easy decision, like what lunch are we bringing in for a client or the team, like I'm not going to do the same process, go through the same process. So everybody like, what do you feel like? Boom. And if this meal doesn't work out, we'll get another one next time. Those are very two complete opposite end bookends. But what I see happen, and especially on this side of the desk now, in channel sales and support, is there is this framework for decision making that is elongating, and it's getting worse, Tony. It's elongating the process for companies and businesses to make decision about how they shape their business going forward, and they're stagnant. First and foremost, there are more people involved in decision-making processes than ever before. I forget the book, you might remember. Once you get to 5 people in decision-making process, all hell breaks loose, right? 4 or less, you can get to a pretty quick decision. 3 or less fast. 2, obviously. 1, very quick. North of 5, now it's a committee, and you know what it's like with committees. Just look at government. Very hard to get that stuff going. So I think that there needs to be a different set of frameworks and a different process. And the lower impact, the more courage. The quicker the decision needs to be, because if you're a leader, you're all about driving the business forward. And with the low impact, low risk, non-life threatening, non-career changing decisions, you can be a bit more cavalier about it. That said, there is a time where you need to bring the courage in, because you want to move the business ahead of your competitor. You're not going to do that doing what the guy next door did or the gal next door did. Sometimes you have to have a vision. You have to weight that vision and say, I am going to make this work. I am going to be different. And you have to do your best to get people to buy in around you, but you got to make that decision too. You got to be quick enough to know if it's not working and just make another one. Mm-hmm. That's something I always said. I watched my dad struggle with decision making my whole life. He really liked to think things through. We would do a project around the house, Tone, and it'd be like making sure I got all the plays in my head, because if this goes wrong when I'm doing this, I'm going to do that. And if this goes wrong while I'm doing this, I'm going to do this. And ultimately, you know what happened? We would do it, and something else would happen in the middle of it, and we'd have to figure it out as we went along anyway. And we always did. Mm-hmm. We always did. And so I'm like, hey, let's just make a decision. Not rash. Think it through with a reasonable amount of stuff, but let's go. Let's charge it. And then figure out making it. When you see leaders and when you're going through decision making in companies, how are you seeing it? I see it as the ability to make good decisions and have a process for decision making, and then have great, strong execution. It's a differentiator. Most companies are locked up and not making any decisions at all, and everything gets pushed out months and years, literally months and years.
I guess decisions are tough, because even the word itself means to cut off from other options. So no matter what it is that you're doing, who you decide to marry, who you decide to go into business with, where you decide to live, these are really big decisions. Where you decide to go to school, these decisions have ramifications and impact for a long time. But I think that probably what scared your dad about making decisions in general was exactly that, cutting off from other possibilities. But I think that's where the courage comes in, because we know.
But even small decisions, Tone.
Yeah, he did.
Hey, we're gonna put a new oven in.
Yeah,
and the oven's a little different size.
Mm-hmm.
When we pull that oven out of the wall, what are we going to see behind that wall?
Yeah.
And he was envisioning what he was going to see. Rather than us ripping that thing out of the wall, finding out what we're going to see, and dealing with it. And I use that example specifically because I remember that was a project that just didn't happen for the longest time. My mother wanted this other oven.
Thinking about it.
Thinking, how am I going to do this? I got to support it. The weight's different, the this, the that, the whatever. And, I guess, for him, maybe the job being wrong was, I don't know. We never really talked about it. Yeah.
Fear. I mean, that should definitely be a concept in the next book, like the Lucky 13 is just, decisions and courage, and the inability to make decisions and have that courage is backed by some sort of fear. Not being a therapist, going back in the past to find out why you didn't get the lead in your, middle school play is one thing. But the other thing is, and I do that even in the coaching is, how do you make decisions when you're buying a car? For myself, I make them real impulsively, but after a very long time of studying every detail.
Right.
When I finally go there, I'm like, I'll take that one. Like, that's what I want. I'm like, wow.
As Guhan Ragu would say, this might seem seat of the pants,
yes.
but it's been very thoughtfully calculated.
Guhan,
might seem seat of the pants.
Might seem like I'm,
but that's, going back to my dad, by the way, you are 100% right. That is fear. And I recall a conversation I had with him in his final weeks, where he told me that he admired me, that I had a lot of courage.
Wow.
And I took he doesn't even know how I got the ability to go take chances in life, because he certainly didn't get it from him.
How does somebody, grow up in that environment with somebody who's a little bit more fear-based and then actually make the decisions, do what you've been able to do?
I could tell you how that happened. We've talked about this. You might not recall. But to let my dad understand that I understood him, and I said, hey, here's the difference between you and me. You grew up during the Depression. You probably became cognizant of your life surroundings at the tail end of it. But your father, you were born in 1933. Grandpa was living through the Depression. Yes. And somebody might have offered him $2 for a day's work if he showed up, and maybe he was one of 3 people that would have got, there were 3 people being picked and there were 10 waiting for the job. Or he can go here and for 25 cents he can work, but it's guaranteed he's working. So what do you think he did? Very cautious. He went and made 25 cents.
Right.
Okay. And so my grandfather, great guy as he was, came to this country with nothing, came here on a boat from Italy, was here 15 years and lives through the Great Depression. Okay. He's got a family, kids are coming in. He's surviving. So he had a very cautious mindset, and that got infused into my dad. Don't take a chance. Don't do this. You got to go for the sure thing. And my grandfather was, it was touch and go for a while. It wasn't very stable. The reason I'm different is because I didn't have that. Although my father had that in him, he was driven to create some stability for us. So it was his stability that gave me the freedom to launch. I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? I'm going to sleep in the twin bed in my bedroom, and my mother's going to make a meal tonight.
Yeah.
What did I have to lose? You and I always talked about, hey, as long as we had a place to sleep and $500, we could solve anything back in those days.
That kind of brings up something, in the name itself, in the Lucky 13, is how much luck actually plays in it. From your
go deeper. Yeah.
Well, how lucky, do you have to be to have the right parents? How lucky do you have to be to make the right decisions, to have that runway, to get to a point where you could be thinking about business strategy and client and focus, or even personal development for that matter?
It's a blessing. And you got to be very lucky.
Yeah, no doubt. It definitely is.
You got to be very lucky. There are many less fortunate that start, if you use a baseball analogy, you've got a better chance of making it to first base on a ball in the outfield on the ground from home plate. But if I had to start running from the locker room once the ball was hit, come out of the dugout, come running on the field, and then make my way to first, my chance of getting the first on that same hit is going to be a lot different. So,
But really, to answer your
it's tough.
question, like you said, I mean, but still, you might have had, three hots and a cot
Yeah.
as a backup plan.
Yeah.
But how did you still overcome that mindset that your dad definitely had? I don't know if your mom had it too. I remember her being quite conservative and cautious as well. To being a guy that says, hey, I want to make it in the music business, and you want to build business.
Yeah.
What gave you the belief? Like they say, you'll never be as good as you are lucky. But we do know that there was something else going on there that had to have, you saw something, you pivoted,
Yeah. I could tell you what it was. It's when I met Jack Ponte.
Yeah.
Here was a guy, and I mentioned this in the book, and I use the term supreme confidence.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was so over his skis in confidence. You know what I mean? He had
Definitely
incredibly humble.
a legend. Yeah.
Yeah, he had humble living environment. He went through a lot of struggle, but he was convinced that he was going to be something big in music, that he was close to it. He knew how to do it. He had the gift of communication, as they call it back in Jersey, the gift of gab. He could sell wedding rings in divorce court, no doubt about it. And so I saw a guy, he was one of the first guys I saw who was really swinging for the fences.
Well, this is also this is you modeling success.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that had to be early on learning that really shifted your focus from maybe a scarcity mindset that you might have been around. Someone definitely had been around that, to seeing more of the abundance mindset and the possibility of thinking without restrictions.
And so here was, I was lucky, as you'd say. We grew up, sort of middle class. 3 hots and a cot was always in my cards. I don't remember ever worrying about not eating for the day. We weren't lavish by any stretch of the means. I certainly didn't get anything I wanted. I was definitely in line for the hand-me-downs. No doubt about it. Went through that. But here was a guy who had absolutely nothing and saw himself with absolutely everything. And I don't know if he did it out of desperation or belief, or he wanted to prove the universe wrong. Someday we'll, find out from him. And I think I know what it was, but I won't speak for him. And so and then I started being around people from the music business, going and seeing labels, seeing people who made it, talking to people who had nothing and then became successful in the music business, from Bon Jovi, then being up at the House of Music and seeing the Kool and the Gang guys in there, and talking to Jim Steinman, who did the Meatloaf records, and seeing all the greatest session players come in there, from Steve Gadd to Lukather to, Todd Rundgren, and every one of these people.
Michael Wagner, Roy Thomas Baker.
Yeah. Nobody was born a rock star. Ahmet Ertegun. Ahmet's story was unbelievable. He was slinging records out of the trunk of his car, Turkish immigrant. So I now all of a sudden was exposed to dreamers. And I just thought, why not me?
Right.
Why not me? And it's funny, when I made my way out of the music business, unwillingly but happily, as I was forging my way into technology, and I started doing well in tech, I was moving very quickly. I was finding a lot of success pretty fast. When I got offered my first job, my father was shocked because it was more money than he had made in his life, and he was super proud of me. It was great. And then maybe a few months after that, they decided they were going to further my technical education. They were going to pay for it. And that I had to sign a paper that said if I left within a year, I would have to pay it back pro rata. I left right away. I paid it all. I left at 11 months. I paid it 11/12. 10 months, I paid 10/12. I had to be there for at least a year after I graduated from the program. The program was a year long, so it locked me in for 2 years, which for them was a great bet. They really liked me.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
And my father said to me, I wouldn't sign that. They're going to fuck you. That's what he said. And
Yeah.
I looked at him and I was like, here I am. I'm like sharing the greatest news. They're doubling down on me,
Yeah.
my
Belief.
talents. I'm going to be worth so much more when this is done. And somehow he saw something negative in it. And Tone, my mother lit his ass on fire.
Yeah.
My mother was cautious, but she wasn't negative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she was always like, yeah, that
Big
sounds like a
difference.
great idea. I know you can do that. You know, she didn't know how to tell me exactly how,
Mm-hmm.
but my mom was like a clock, man. She was, she was reliable. She worked hard. She was a very pleasant woman. Always had a good word for people, not a gossiper, always smiling, super honest, great, just amazing. Yeah, I was lucky. I hit the parent lottery for sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. You said cautious versus fearful.
Yeah.
Or the word you used. But, where do you think the hard line is between the two? I mean, it sounds like you were walking that line exactly between both parents.
Yeah. It's funny.
It's negative.
It's funny. I think about this right now. I think about a pretty cool story. Or my mother never discouraged me, my brother or sister from anything.
Mm-hmm.
If we said we were going to build a rocket ship and launch it into space, she'd be like, "Where's the launch?" But she did to my dad.
Really?
My dad was a bit of a closet inventor.
Mm.
And you should see the shit he used to make for our science projects in New York. We had shit they knew we didn't build. I mean, the best science projects ever, really, really cool stuff. But he said, gosh, this was in the 60s, that my uncle had just bought a house and the garage door is really heavy. And he went over there and he rigged up some motor and some pulley system and he made a garage door open before they were commercially available. And he was like, this needs to be refined, but everybody would have one of these. My mother was like, that's ridiculous. Who can't open their garage door? That's not an idea I could get behind.
Uh-huh.
I could get behind. Yeah, another one of his things was he built this thing for my brother. He got, what a mercury switch is?
Yeah. Mercury,
right. Remember the old school thermostats? It had the liquid in it, and as you would turn it, it would conduct more electricity.
Drink it.
Yeah, exactly. No, just eat fish. He bought this little pack that was like a little alarm. And when you hit the button, right, it would buzz, but it had an earpiece in it. And so he rewired this earpiece with it, and he put a mercury switch on the back of it. And the whole premise was when your head would go forward, the bell would go off in your ear.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Okay.
Ahead of his time.
Trucker's helper.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the road and you're a trucker and all of a sudden you nod off, you're gonna wake up.
Mm-hmm.
My mother thought it was the most ridiculous thing she ever heard. And when I tell you 6 years later, that thing was in the back of like Popular Mechanics magazine.
Uh-huh.
And it might have even actually been called the Trucker's Helper or something like that. Like somebody was selling it.
Right.
Somebody was selling it. So it's funny that my mother never really, it was kind of like the Honeymooners, if you remember that old thing where like Ralph was the big dreamer. He had all these ideas and his wife was like, you're a dreamer. Go drive the bus,
Yeah.
So, I don't know where it came from. I'll tell you that Jack was certainly, and then the exposure to people in the music business. Everybody I was around thought they were going to be in a big band. They were going to be the Rolling Stones.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the few guys who pulled it off was John Bon Jovi.
Yep. That's for sure.
I was, before he was big, driving around with him in the back of my 71 Plymouth Satellite. And he was, he's just made his first record. He's going to be huge. He's got a management deal. Just crazy, crazy stuff.
Hey,
but that's
flying with him to a show in Connecticut and being back home before Letterman.
Back home. Yeah,
right?
that's some experience. But he he and a lot of people around us, and Jersey had a great music scene, still has a pretty cool scene, but there were a lot of people popping out of there from, Bruce in the 70s, and, Southside Johnny had his, moment in the light, and Bon Jovi exploded, and then actors and actresses coming out of Jersey. So there was a scene in our proximity to New York where all the labels were, counter to the ones in LA and Broadway and all of the things going on there. So we were not that far from greatness. It's not like we lived in the middle of the country and access to people doing that and doing great things was only seen on television. And so I'm not really certain where that came from. But I just knew that once it started happening, once I saw something and I just worked really hard to make it happen, and it worked. It was sort of like, I don't want to say it was rinse, repeat, but it was like, oh, okay. It's just, you got to do the reps, got to keep trying. You got to never quit. Everybody I had on the show who's had a successful business says the sole differentiator in succeeding or failing is being adapting to change and never quitting. Because the second you quit, you're done.
Hey, it's funny because I forgot the story that I knew so well that you told in the upfront of the book, where you're looking in the paper and you see that there's nothing you're qualified to do. I mean, music business, everything, die hard, 110%. Yep. And then music business changes and you have to pivot and adapt. How did you go into technology at that time? Not, what was the mindset that you had that got you to a spot where you didn't feel sorry for yourself and, maybe spiral down? Like what kept your head in the game?
Yeah. So let's tell the story real quick. I'm in the Garwood, New Jersey wash and dry. Mm-hmm. And we're in between the washer and the dry cycle. And I had a session that got canceled, multi-month session at the studio that I owned at the time. And that was months worth of revenue. And it went from that to zero. And, in that business, people are booking in advance. And I didn't have a very complex marketing machine, a couple ads in the East Coast Rocker and word of mouth. And I had turned everybody away for months for this project, and it canceled. And the investor just said, "Hey, we're not doing it. We're not paying." And so I had to figure out something to do. And we're at the wash and dry, and I see on the dryer, there's a newspaper. It's a classified section. I pick it up. My wife says, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I got to find a job." And that's how you found jobs back then. I look through the whole thing, through the paper now. My wife's like, "What's the matter?" I go, "There's not one job in there I'm qualified for." She goes, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out. It'll be okay." And this is the beauty of my wife. I mean, she's always been in my corner. Always, just never pointed a finger at me or said, you couldn't or you didn't. Always just behind me. Mm-hmm. And minutes went by, and I picked up the paper again after throwing it down. She's like, "What are you doing? I thought you looked through that." And I said, "Yeah, I looked through it wrong." And I said, I looked through it to see what I was qualified for. I said, "I need to find something that I think I would really like doing, and then figure out how to get there." Mm-hmm. And because my brother had exposed, mindset. That's exactly right. And because my brother had exposed me to, and my father, but a lot with my brother, had exposed me to electronics and signal flow. And he was an engineer in the radio business, and I used to work with him and wiring things up. I built studio, and I knew signal flow, and then he got me introduced into audio over telephony and all of these things. I'm like, oh, that's kind of like technology. I bet you I'd be really good at that. And then I just started popping around. And once I announced to the universe that I was making this charge into technology, it started responding. Good. And Chris went into the office and was talking to a coworker. "Yeah, my husband's going to get into technology." And it's interesting because this guy, who was also my first and 27th guest on the podcast, Michael Kolbrenner, he was a fine arts guy who was, loved music and performance, and he was in technology. And he goes, "Oh, your husband was in the music business, and hey, I could talk to him because there are so many paths you can take. You can be an infrastructure, you can be an engineer, you can be a developer, you can be a program manager. There's, project manager. So many ways to go. Why don't you talk? Have him call me." And that was the call, that started my career. He described a situation I needed to be in and said, he goes, you're real smart. You just need to find somebody who recognizes that like I did, and just to give you a shot. And he said, don't worry about how much money you're making. You just need to get something on your resume. And oddly enough, I just said to him immediately, I'll never forget exactly where I was and where I was standing when it happened. I was in the apartment in Westfield, right next to the Rialto Theater. And I said to him, do you need anybody like that? And he paused. And I was like, uh-oh, I blew it. I said, shit, man, this guy's really like helping me out and mentoring me. And first thing I do in the first conversation is I ask him for a job.
Right.
And he said to me, hey, why don't you come talk to me tomorrow? And I got dressed the next day and I went down there and I talked to him and I started working for, very low wage. And that was the beginning of how that worked. But forget how we got into this thing, the story of transitioning, how I felt. I tell people all the time, I had long hair. I worked with lots of creative, artistic people, lots of characters. And now I was in a world where it was just completely different. And I felt like, I went to bed a human and woke up in somebody else's skin. Like almost like an alien skin.
I will say this. I mean, I've known you for many years.
Yeah.
Person I knew in the music business that was keeping the band together, keeping them on schedule, that was juggling a producer in one hand, and on the other hand, the record company, and on the foot, probably the manager of the band. You took those exact same skills and you transitioned them into the business world. I know it for a fact.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't change. That was the same thing you're doing. I mean,
it was the same skills.
It was really the same faces changed, but it was still the same characters. No doubt.
No doubt. And, maybe some of it's from growing up a middle child.
Interesting.
Key negotiator, the bridge between, right? Your parents didn't make the first time mistakes, but they still cared enough, unlike the last child. When you're like, oh yeah, go out in traffic, That's interesting. It's thought provoking. I'm going to certainly be thinking about that later on tonight. But, for those, I'm going to label this episode part 1. We're going to have to do a couple of these because, we barely touched the book and I want to come back to it. And I find when these things go well beyond where we are now, we lose some of the listeners and viewers. So, Tone, if it's all right with you, I'd like to schedule a part 2.
Of course.
And we'll pick up more in the book. For those who are out there, a couple of things. One is, if you're in business and you want to grow that business and you want to shape yourself or leadership, there is no one better. This is not only because of a 40-year relationship, but it's because of a 40-year relationship that I say this with complete visibility and trust. Go to twrmindset.com, get in touch with Coach T. And if not him, because I know his schedule's jammed and packed with lots of people, he's got an army of coaches that are trained in the way of the Jedi, so to speak, through Tony's experience. And there are lots of different things that can be done there. If you're out there, and this is the first time I've self-promoted, go out to Amazon, pick up The Lucky 13 by Vic Pepe. Beautiful little red book. It's got my little podcast piece on the back here. It was
really growing. Like, what are you up to in listeners in this short amount of time already?
Oh, I just this morning I hit 16,000 subscribers.
Really?
And now what's happening too is, and I'm learning a lot about how this YouTube algorithm works. Now the comments are really starting to come in, because first people would listen and you check your engagement time. How long are they listening? Where are they dropping out? And you start real strong when it's low. But then I compared myself to the biggest and best YouTubers.
Right.
My stats are comparable.
Oh,
the most engagement is modest. Let's just say that. And people pick these things up and listen in pieces. So if this are an hour and a half and I listened for 5 minutes and I came back and listened for 10, those don't add up to engagement. It's 5 minutes, it's 10 minutes, it's 2 minutes, right? So that's sort of how that's working. It's the continuous thread of engagement that is important. I listen if I pick something up. If it's multi-hours, I don't have the time to listen to an hour and a half or 3 hours in one, but I bust it up and I might listen to it over 2 nights. And then, of course, these long forms make a lot of short content as well, and those things are picked. I just had one of my shorts hit over 18,000 views, which is the top performing short. It's not 1 million yet, but you get that in the mix. Prior to that, the top one was 7,200 views.
Very cool.
And this was a very 30-second clip on the influence that my grandfather had on me.
Wow.
And his belief in me, what that did.
Yeah.
And just wanting to, because he believed in me, wanting to go out and overperform. It was huge. So Tone, thanks for popping on tonight. Like I said, I'm going to label this part 1. We'll probably have part 99 before long. But want to have you back on, and we'll flip the script a little bit next time.
Anytime.
Dig more into some of the coaching concepts. Hi, man. Have a great evening. Thanks again.
All right. Good stuff. Thanks, Vic.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.